Biden also made no mention of his disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal and the 13 U.S. service members killed in Kabul. Joining me right now is Florida Congressman, former Green Beret commander, the only Green Beret in Congress, Commander Michael Waltz. He is a member of the Armed Services Committee. And Congressman, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Maria.
So we've talked about the reliance on Russia a lot. I'd like to know your thoughts on how it's possible that we are going to vilify Vladimir Putin on what he's done in Ukraine. At the same time, we're actually buying Russian oil, increasing those numbers huge in the last year. And we also have Russia as the mediator on behalf of America trying to negotiate in the Vienna talks to get back into an Iran deal. How does that work?
Yeah, right, Maria. But I'll address that in a second. I just want to go back to what you just mentioned about zero mention, nothing on Afghanistan. I mean, just frankly, what a slap in the face to those 13 Gold Star moms, to our allies that we left behind, and to the service members that at some point are going to have to go back over to deal with this terrorism problem. And barely any mention of China either. But on Russia, look, once again, others are leading. The EU is moving towards more restrictions on Russian oil and gas. Canada has put in a ban, but Biden knows and Putin knows that he's boxed in a corner on this. The price is shooting through the roof. It's affecting Americans at the pump. It's a big driver of inflation, and that there were over 100 progressives in the room at the State of the Union. He wouldn't dare talk about unleashing American energy. Just incredibly, another disappointment.
Yeah, it was really stunning, the fact that we are, in fact, importing all of this oil from Russia at the same time that he's attacking them. But let me get your take on the China comment. That's a really important point that you make. No mention on China. And I've been outraged over the last couple of weeks after learning that the Department of Justice has canceled the China initiative. So you've got the DOJ looking for quote-unquote pandemic fraud, which is what Biden called it last night, but no comment whatsoever on the fraud coming out of the CCP, since it continues to try to become #1 in the world by stealing the West's intellectual property, and we're no longer going to investigate this.
Yeah, it's outrageous, Maria. These American professors are taking NASA grants, taxpayer-funded Defense Department grants, the most advanced technologies, nanotechnologies, advanced materials, and they develop this research here in our universities, and then they go over to China and collect hundreds of thousands of dollars a month to go teach over there, but basically transfer that technology to the CCP, not to mention the Chinese researchers that are all over by the hundreds of thousands. Our institutions here, and the Justice Department is no longer going to investigate him. It is the most massive transfer of wealth and technology to an adversary, I think, in modern history. And the Department of Justice is just walking away. It's really outrageous. And then Biden, we spent many minutes on Made in America. It's a lot of talk. Yeah. Let's get back to the Trump actions. In terms of bringing that manufacturing back home and incentivizing it and driving the agenda. Again, it was just a lot of rhetoric.
Yeah, and I know that you're going to be working with the Judiciary Committee in terms of investigating why the DOJ is stopping this probe into China's theft. We'll talk with Jim Jordan coming up in the program about that. But in terms of Made in America, it's a great point, because I mentioned the other day, here we are in the middle of a war in Ukraine, and we're reliant on oil from Russia. Do we want to wait until China invades Taiwan to wake up and say, why are our prescription drugs made in China right now?
Our prescription drugs to the tune of 90%. We no longer make antibiotics. We barely make oncology medicine. And the Chinese have actively threatened to cut that off if we don't see the world that way. Not to mention our advanced materials. We want to talk about a green economy. Well, the lithium and cobalt and graphite you need for all of the batteries are all dominated there. by the Chinese. So we have got to move past this rhetoric, to your point, before it's too late.
Real quick on Russia, we want to make sure to get your assessment of where we are in this war on Ukraine. Russia keeps saying that it's ready to resume negotiations with Ukraine as Putin's forces at the same time ramp up deadly attacks on civilians, sending paratroopers in to invade Kharkiv. Earlier today, the Ukrainian government says a Russian missile struck a national police building. And Biden announced last night the ban of Russian flights from American airspace, a dozen companies also severing or pulling products from Russia. Congressman, Russia keeps saying it wants to talk while they throw bombs at us. Is this just propaganda? How would you assess where we are now in that fight?
It's a classic Russian tactic of escalate to de-escalate, engage in talks. But basically at the talks, they're saying we're going to continue to dismantle and destroy your country until you agree to our ridiculous terms. I mean, for Zelensky to permanently recognize Ukraine, permanently walk away from eastern Ukraine, and completely demilitarize his entire country in the middle of an invasion is just laughable. But it's also going to be tragic. Maria, this is going to get far worse before it gets better. They did the same thing in Afghanistan, Chechnya, and Syria, where the more frustrated the Russians get, the more incompetent they are in terms of conventional military tactics, the more they're going to bring in the heavy artillery, bombing cities, and causing mass atrocities and refugee crises. They've done it for decades now, and I think they're going to do it again.
So even though it feels like Ukraine is in some ways winning, battling back, Zelensky holding firm, you think Russia has a lot more firepower to come, and this gets worse for Ukraine. Is that what you're saying?
Well, on the one hand, Putin's grip on power is dependent on him winning. I think he will be in serious trouble if he has to completely withdraw and has nothing to show for it. On the other hand, Maria, and I'm going to say this again and again, watch the logistics to feed, to fuel, to provide the maintenance and the spare parts for an army this large spread over this kind of geographic territory is a huge undertaking. And I'm not sure the Russian industrial base is up to the task to be able to replace those vehicles, all of the munitions that are involved. So that's what I'm watching. And if the Ukrainian resistance can hit the supply lines, they've got a fighting chance.
Wow. Congressman, thanks very much. Great analysis, as always, from you. We appreciate your time. Congressman Michael Waltz this morning.